One of the groups we do in the hospital is called Busy Bees, and it's a collaboration with art therapy, child life, and music therapy. And the goals are to give toddler-aged kids, so age 18 months to 4 years, the opportunity to increase social skills, to work on pre-academic skills, basically a setting that they would find in a typical preschool if they were not in the hospital. And so this one kiddo was invited to group, and he was a kid who was newly diagnosed with leukemia, and as part of that he had fractures all over his body and had been actually in a full body cast for a little bit. So yeah, he was feeling pretty punky when he came to group, but he worked with his rehab team to help get him there and his mom there. So he had not been able to move for weeks at a time before coming to group. When he came to group and he heard the music going on and he saw a couple other kids his age there engaging in some egg shakers, he actually reached out and grabbed a couple egg shakers and gave them a little shake with the rest of the kids, and actually gave a little smile as well. And it was just so amazing to see him engage and motivated by having his peers there, motivated by the music and a familiar song, to start working on some of his rehab goals, like moving his arms and things like this. Really soon after that, his mom started crying and said that was the first time she'd seen him smile since they'd been in the hospital. So that was really special to be able to be a part of.
The focus of my clinical practice has been trauma, specifically the type of trauma where the source has been human-caused. Coupling music therapy best practices and current research on trauma from Bessel van der Kolk, Pat Ogden, Peter Levine, and most especially Steve Porges' polyvagal theory, I was able to hold 2 pilot clinical trials that targeted the brainstem and limbic system where trauma responses reside. The results were peer-reviewed during a fellow presentation in neurologic music therapy. The trauma music therapy technique is called bilateral sensory support, the purpose of which is to diminish trauma responses, i.e. PTSD, and build tolerance and resilience to a client's trauma triggers.
I collaborate a lot with physical therapists, occupational therapists. One of the physical therapists asked me to collaborate and do what we call a co-treat session, where we both kind of combine forces. And we do a little bit of information sharing at the beginning of those sessions or sometimes beforehand, just to make sure that I understand what the goals that they're working on, and then I try and translate those goals using music. So we're using music exercises to accomplish what those goals are. So for this gal, she was 9 and she was recovering from brain injury, and she was having difficulty walking fast enough for her steps to be even. So the physical therapist asked if we could work on increasing the speed of her walking, the tempo of her walking, her cadence. This is something that is done a lot in neurologic music therapy, and uses a technique called rhythmic auditory stimulation. So basically just using that periodic sound and then using that to drive the motor movements. The interesting and funny part about this is that this gal didn't really like me very much. So I'd had a couple sessions with her supporting other therapists, and so when I arrived at this, I was feeling a little bit concerned about how it was going to go. But I pretty quickly realized that she was enjoying the beats that I was using with the iPad, and I was creating this kind of rhythmic beat track, and found the tempo that she was walking at normally. And then basically over the course of that first half of the session, while she was walking, I would very slowly, I'd bring up the tempo of the piece, the music. And she would basically walk faster with that tempo. And so by the time we got to a spot to take a break and sit down, I actually mentioned to the physical therapist that she was moving at this target that we had hoped for, and neither one of them had noticed because it was so subtle, the shifts in tempo. And I think that experience really taught me a lot about how music really does drive the behavior, and in this case drives those motor movements, even to the point where she didn't even enjoy my presence or anything I was saying. But that's okay, because the music was still there, helping her to kind of achieve this goal that we were working on with her?
So I mainly work with children and families who have changing family situations of some kind. Sometimes people have a caregiver coming back into the picture after being gone. Sometimes there's a death in the family. Sometimes people are in CPS or recently adopted. And so a lot of the work that I do is focused around attachment and relationships, as well as trauma-informed care and trauma healing. So one client that I'm thinking of, I work with a parent and child, and the child entered care with this parent as a it was the child's auntie who then adopted him. And so this child was coming in with a lot of past trauma and a really insecure attachment to his past caregiver. He needed a lot of sense of him being the one in control, and what we really wanted to work on was him building that primary attachment with his primary caregiver. And that can be difficult to build skills and ways of being that we learn in infancy as a 4 or 5-year-old. But music gave us this beautiful avenue where, first of all, it was a completely destigmatized therapy environment, unlike where parent visits sometimes happen or other therapies kind of feel a little bit forced or stilted. It was a really natural way for them to be together. It was culturally appropriate. And secondly, the music provided us an avenue to have a lot of those serve and return interactions going back and forth between the child and the parent, where initially when the child was really needing to experience that sense of control, the parent and I could reflect what the child was doing musically, where if he was moving really fast, we could play really fast. If he was starting to slow down, or if he hit something, or if he bounced, we could reflect that in the music. And so he got that awareness that, oh, my caregiver is really paying attention to the things that I'm doing, and this is sort of a shared dynamic between us. And so then we've been able to move into more targeted and intentional back and forth experiences, like having conversations without words on a xylophone or on a piano, like playing marching band and having different leaders so that he can experience safety within following what an adult does, not only when he's the one in control. Playing with different dynamics and speeds and energy levels, which help build that flexibility with arousal as well, that can be really key for kids coming out of trauma experiences. So the music therapy space has been a really positive experience for them, where they were pretty resistant to some other therapies, but the mom has really consistently expressed that in music therapy they don't feel like stigmatized, they don't feel like they're there because they're in trouble or because anything is wrong. It's a space where they're able to play, and within that musical play there's all these natural opportunities for this child to fill in some of the developmental and attachment related gaps that he had.
So at this Adult Life Center, I have several music groups. It's mostly small groups ranging from 6 to 10 students or so, individuals. And most of our goals are centered around positive social interactions. So whatever we do, whether it be playing instruments together or one student being a leader, providing leadership opportunities for that student, as well as following opportunities so that they can be responding to another peer leading. We do a lot of self-expression, where whether we're playing music and expressing ourselves non-verbally or expressing ourselves verbally and just checking in with each other to see how they're doing and how can we be there for our friends in a supporting way. And that's just what it's like to be in a band with your friends, you know. So we have a lot of those social interactions that just come along with making music with friends that address a whole slew of incredible things that young adults, especially with autism, can really benefit from those positive social interactions in a music setting. I'm thinking in particular of one student who is in my rock band group, and he has been for a couple years, and suffered from severe anxiety, where he would just have anxiety attacks and nervous breakdowns, and had trouble expressing himself in groups or performing in groups. And I've watched this individual go from hiding behind the piano because it was a safe space for him to perform in the background. However, we went and performed at the hospital in front of a lot of people, and this guy, he overcame his anxieties in a trusting group with his bandmates, and just that feeling of elation after the performance, where he was so excited, he was so happy and proud, and his dad got to witness it, and just knowing that trusting environment and that band is what helped him overcome a lot of this anxiety. That was huge for him. That was last year, and this past year he became the lead singer of our band, and now is okay to stand in front of a microphone. We write songs together, so he's able to contribute to some songs about, we wrote a song about a road trip with your friends, and what does that mean to you? So addressing goals of self-expression, but mainly just to see the confidence of our students build with one another is a beautiful thing.